What would you do if a billionaire left you a $0 tip after you gave him the
Hola.
best service of your life? Most people would walk away heartbroken, but one single mom waitress discovered something hidden beneath his plate that changed her future forever. In today's emotional story, you'll witness how one simple act of kindness turned into an unbelievable blessing. If you enjoy inspiring stories with powerful life lessons, make sure to *** like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell *** so you never miss our next story. Now, grab a seat, relax, and let's get started. Emily Carter had learned long ago that life didn't pause for exhaustion. At 29 years old, she was raising her 8-year-old son, Noah, alone in a small apartment on the east side of Dallas, Texas. Every morning began before sunrise. She would wake Noah, help him get dressed for school, prepare a simple breakfast of toast and eggs whenever they could afford them, and quietly remind him to keep his inhaler in his backpack. Noah suffered from asthma, and the medication that kept him healthy cost more than Emily wanted to admit. Every prescription forced her to choose between paying another bill or buying groceries. Yet she never let her son see the fear behind her smile. After dropping Noah at school, Emily headed straight to Willow Creek Diner, a family-owned restaurant that had served the neighborhood for decades. The building wasn't fancy, but the regular customers loved its homemade pies, fresh coffee, and warm atmosphere. Emily had worked there for almost 4 years, taking double shifts whenever someone called in sick. She knew every table, every regular customer, and every shortcut to keep the busy lunch crowd happy. Even after 10-hour shifts, she greeted everyone with the same gentle smile. Her coworkers often wondered how she stayed so patient. "You smile more than people who actually have easy lives," one waitress joked while refilling ketchup bottles. Emily laughed softly. "If someone walks through that door carrying a heavy day, maybe one smile makes it a little lighter." Those words became her quiet philosophy. Still, life outside the diner wasn't getting easier. That month had been especially difficult. Rent was already 5 days overdue. Her old sedan needed expensive repairs after refusing to start twice that week. Noah's school had sent home a notice about an upcoming science trip, and Emily had no idea where she would find the extra money. She counted every dollar in her purse 3 times before buying groceries, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They never did. Friday evenings were always the busiest at Willow Creek Diner. Families filled the booths after football games. Travelers stopped for dinner on their way through the city, and office workers escaped the downtown traffic with coffee and burgers. Emily barely had time to catch her breath between taking orders and delivering meals. Around 7 o'clock, the conversations inside the diner suddenly grew quieter. The front door opened, and a tall man stepped inside wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit. His polished black shoes barely made a sound against the floor. Silver strands mixed with his dark hair, and his expensive watch caught the light above the counter. Several customers recognized him immediately. "Is that Richard Sterling?" one man whispered. "I think it is. The billionaire?" The whispers spread from table to table. Richard Sterling wasn't just wealthy. He was one of the most powerful businessmen in America. His company owned hotels, technology firms, shopping centers, and investment companies across the country. Newspapers often described him as brilliant, demanding, and impossible to impress. Stories about him circulated everywhere. Some claimed he'd fired executives during 5-minute meetings. Others insisted he never smiled and almost never left tips in restaurants because he believed employees should earn their wages from their employers, not customers. Whether those stories were true or not, everyone seemed nervous the moment he entered. Emily's manager hurried toward her. "Table 12, he whispered. "Please be careful. We don't need any problems tonight." Emily nodded calmly. Every guest deserves the same service. She grabbed a menu and walked toward Richard with her usual warm smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Willow Creek Diner. My name is Emily, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Richard barely looked up from the menu. "Coffee, of course." "Black, I'll have it right out." She returned moments later with a fresh cup. Before she could set it down, Richard took a sip, frowned slightly, and said, "It's not hot enough. I'm sorry. I'll bring you a fresh pot immediately." She didn't argue. She simply replaced it with a steaming cup within minutes. Later he ordered a ribeye steak with mashed potatoes and vegetables. When the meal arrived, he cut into the steak once before placing his fork down. "It's overcooked." Emily looked carefully. To her eyes, the steak appeared exactly medium rare, just as ordered. "I'm very sorry. I'll have the kitchen prepare another one." The cook sighed when Emily explained, "There's nothing wrong with it." "I know," Emily replied quietly, "but let's make another." 15 minutes later, she served the replacement with an apology and a fresh smile. Throughout the evening, Richard remained distant. He asked for more water twice, requested fresh butter, and wanted extra napkins. Emily fulfilled every request without showing frustration, even though several other tables needed her attention. Her coworkers watched from across the room. "He's impossible," one muttered. "I told you he never appreciates anything." Emily simply continued working. Near closing time, Richard finished his meal, folded his napkin neatly beside the plate, paid the bill with a credit card, and walked out without saying goodbye. Emily waited until the receipt printed. She picked it up. The total had been paid in full. Below it, in the space marked tip, was a single number, $0. For a brief moment, the world around her seemed unusually quiet. She had spent nearly 2 hours making sure every detail of his meal was perfect, hoping perhaps he'd leave enough to cover Noah's medicine. Instead, there wasn't a single dollar. Her chest tightened, but she refused to cry. She folded the receipt, slipped it into the check holder, and whispered to herself, "It's okay. Tomorrow is another day." Then she picked up the empty coffee cup and reached for the dinner plate. As she lifted it, something unexpected caught her eye. Hidden neatly beneath the plate was a small white envelope that hadn't been there before. There was no name on the front. No logo. No return address, only a single handwritten sentence in elegant black ink. ***4. The waitress who never stopped being kind. Emily stood frozen beside the empty booth, staring at the white envelope resting in her hands. Around her, the diner buzzed with the usual sounds of closing time. Plates clattered in the kitchen, chairs scraped across the floor, and coworkers joked about finally getting home. Yet everything seemed distant, as if the world had suddenly slowed down. Her heart pounded. She carefully opened the envelope, expecting perhaps an apology or maybe a forgotten receipt. Instead, she found a neatly folded letter and a small silver key attached to a polished metal tag. Engraved on the tag was a simple address in downtown Dallas. She unfolded the letter with trembling fingers. Some people measure kindness by money. I measure it by character. If you're willing to trust a stranger, come to this address tomorrow morning at 9. Come alone. There was no signature, only the familiar initials she had seen on the credit card receipt. R.S. Emily read the note 3 times. "What is it?" her coworker, Lisa, asked while stacking coffee mugs. Emily quickly folded the paper and slipped it back into the envelope. "Oh, nothing important. I think a customer forgot something." Lisa shrugged and returned to work. But Emily couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious invitation. That night, sleep refused to come. She sat at the tiny kitchen table in her apartment after Noah had fallen asleep. Bills were spread across the worn wooden surface. Rent, electricity, water, medical expenses. The numbers seemed endless. She looked again at the silver key lying beside the envelope. What if it's some kind of prank? She whispered. But another thought followed. What if it isn't? The next morning, after dropping Noah at school and asking her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, to pick him up later that afternoon, Emily drove toward downtown Dallas. Her aging sedan rattled as it made its way through busy streets lined with towering glass buildings. The address on the key led her to one of the city's most impressive skyscrapers. At the entrance, large silver letters displayed the name, Sterling Foundation. Emily stared in disbelief. This can't be real. She almost turned around. People like Richard Sterling lived in a completely different world. Billionaires didn't invite waitresses to their offices. It made no sense. Taking a deep breath, she walked inside. The marble lobby sparkled beneath elegant chandeliers. Employees in business suits moved confidently through the building while soft piano music played in the background. Emily suddenly became painfully aware of her inexpensive shoes and simple blue dress. Before she could approach the reception desk, a smiling woman looked up. "Good morning. You must be Miss Emily Carter." Emily blinked. "You know my name. We've been expecting you." The receptionist handed her a visitor badge before speaking into a headset. "She's here." Less than a minute later, a middle-aged assistant arrived. "This way, please." Emily followed him through quiet hallways decorated with artwork and photographs of hospitals, schools, and community projects funded by the Sterling Foundation. Every step made her more nervous. Finally, the assistant stopped outside a pair of tall wooden doors. "He'll see you now." The office beyond was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. Richard Sterling stood near the window, wearing another perfectly tailored suit. In daylight, he looked less intimidating than he had in the diner. He turned and offered a small smile. "Thank you for coming." Emily, she remained standing. "I don't understand why I'm here." Richard gestured toward a chair. "Please, sit." She hesitated before taking a seat across from his desk. "I suppose you're wondering why I left." "No." Emily answered honestly. "Yes, I won't pretend that wasn't intentional." Her expression tightened. "I figured as much." Richard nodded slowly. "My mother raised me alone after my father walked away when I was 6 years old." Emily listened quietly. "She worked as a waitress for nearly 15 years, he continued. "People judged her every day. Some treated her with kindness. Others treated her as if she didn't matter. I watched her come home exhausted, yet she never lost her compassion." He walked toward a bookshelf where an old framed photograph stood. He picked it up and handed it to Emily. It showed a young woman wearing a waitress uniform, smiling while holding the hand of a little boy. "My mother," Richard said softly. "And me." Emily studied the picture before carefully returning it. I've spent years wondering whether genuine kindness still exists. Richard continued. Money attracts people who pretend. Success attracts people who expect favors. It's become difficult to know who someone truly is. He looked directly into her eyes. So, from time to time, I conduct my own little test. Emily frowned. A test? I leave no tip. The room fell silent. I don't do it to humiliate people, Richard explained. I do it because disappointment reveals character. Many people chase after me demanding money. Others insult me the moment they think they've been cheated. Emily remembered how hurt she had felt, but also how she had quietly continued serving the remaining customers. I stayed outside the diner for several minutes after I left, Richard admitted. I watched through the front window. You were watching me. Yes, I saw you look at the receipt. I saw the disappointment on your face. But I also saw something else. Emily waited. You didn't shout. You didn't throw the receipt away in anger. You didn't complain to your manager or speak badly about me. Instead, you wiped your eyes, smiled at another family who had just walked in, and served them with exactly the same kindness you showed me. Emily lowered her gaze. I needed the money, she said quietly. Very badly. I know. Richard opened a drawer in his desk and removed a thick folder. I had someone discreetly learn a little about you after dinner. Emily's heart skipped. He slid the folder across the desk. I know you're raising Noah alone. She looked up, startled. I know about his asthma. Her eyes widened. I know your rent is overdue. Emily's voice shook. How do you know all this? I wanted to be certain that your kindness wasn't coming from comfort. Richard gently pushed the folder closer. It was coming from courage. With trembling hands, Emily opened it. The very first page made her stop breathing. It was a certified check. The amount written across it read $100,000. She stared at the number, convinced she was imagining it. Her hands began to tremble, and tears slowly filled her eyes as Richard quietly said, That wasn't the tip I wanted to leave beneath your plate. He smiled warmly. It was only the beginning. Emily's hands trembled so badly that she nearly dropped the check. She looked from the paper to Richard Sterling, convinced there had to be some mistake. This can't be for me, she whispered. Richard smiled gently. It is. I only served you dinner. You gave me something far more valuable than dinner. Emily stared at him in confusion. You reminded me that genuine kindness still exists. She wiped tears from her cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Emily hesitated. Every instinct told her that accepting such an enormous gift would change everything. Yet another part of her feared there had to be conditions attached. There has to be something you want in return. Richard chuckled softly. There. Is her heart raced? I want you to promise me that when life finally becomes easier, you'll help someone else who's struggling. Emily nodded almost immediately. I promise. Richard reached into the folder again. There's one more thing. He handed her another document. It wasn't another check, it was a business proposal. The Sterling Foundation had recently purchased an old neighborhood cafe that had closed during difficult economic times. Instead of selling the building, Richard wanted to reopen it as a community business that would provide jobs for single parents, veterans, and people trying to rebuild their lives after personal hardship. I've interviewed experienced restaurant managers, Richard explained. Most had impressive resumes. Emily looked up, but none of them showed the compassion I saw in you. She laughed. Nervously, I've never managed a business. Know how to treat people, that's different. I disagree. Richard leaned forward. Skills can be taught. Character cannot. Emily sat silently for several moments before finally asking the question that mattered most. What if I fail? Richard smiled. Then we'll learn together. For the first time in years, Emily felt hope replacing fear. She accepted both the check and the offer. The following weeks passed like a dream. The overdue rent disappeared. Every medical bill for Noah was paid in full. His asthma specialist recommended newer treatments that Emily had never been able to afford before. Instead of worrying about choosing between medicine and groceries, she finally stocked their refrigerator with fresh food. Noah noticed the difference almost immediately. Mom, he asked one evening while unpacking groceries, are we rich now? Emily laughed. No. Then why are you smiling all the time? She knelt beside him. Because sometimes life surprises us. Renovations on the old cafe moved quickly. Emily worked alongside architects, designers, cooks, and contractors. Although she had never managed such a large project, Richard kept his promise to guide her instead of controlling her. Every week he visited the construction site, not as a billionaire giving orders, but as a mentor asking questions. What kind of place do you want this to be? He asked one afternoon. Emily looked around the unfinished dining room. I want people to walk in feeling like they matter. Richard nodded. Then that's exactly what we'll build. She hired employees differently than most businesses. During interviews, she asked applicants one unusual question. Tell me about a time someone